it's all about light.
Who is Thomas Kinkade? How has he captured our affections, our ideals, and our aspirations? Thomas Kinkade has been called America's most popular living artist. Looking at Thomas Kinkade's work is like stepping into a dreamscape. He has captured our dreams. In many ways, he paints a better world than we've expected or might hope to have. It's a world we can dream about, a world we can share. And from his treasured paintings, we'll learn something about ourselves.
When I look back on, Thom's life and in my conversations with him, I realized from the time that he was actually quite small, he began to have a vision, and he began to set his course to accomplish that vision. And really today, much of what Thom is doing is a fulfillment of the original vision instilled there in his childhood. And now he's working out that vision to a larger world.
This was his life. This was his main interest from the very, very beginning. When he, of course, you knew when he was very young. I guess it was his second grade teacher that told me that he would be a great artist one day, and I couldn't believe it, but I was thrilled for him. And his sister and I and his brother encouraged him.
My first remembrance of Thom or him drawing and being an artist, you'd go to Thom and say, "Hey Thom, let's go outside and play kickball. I want to go do things outside." He goes, "No, I got to draw. I'm an artist." And I said, "Thom, you're 5 years old. Lighten up. You can go outside." I mean, he'd eventually go outside and play, but the bottom line is he did have this real insight into who he was and what he was, and you can trace that throughout his entire existence.
My brother Thom was always someone who was very focused and who knew what he wanted to be at a very early age.
He could have been a doctor, he could have been a lawyer, which were the things that kids then wanted to do because that's where money was made. But Thom was insistent that art was going to be his life. Even if he failed, even if he didn't make any money, he was going to be an artist.
When you talk about somebody who's, Horatio Alger of the art world or rags to riches, Thom, he really is self-made. When I knew him, he had no money at all.
The journey at times has been very rocky and uncertain, and one of the things I admire most about Thom is his ability to not let that dissuade him from the goal, the vision that he's had.
Thom had it all together right from the start. I think he knew where he was going. If it took working 7 days a week, he was going to get there, and I admired that in him. It's a real problem, especially with artists.
He seemed to have such a zest for life, such a wanting to live to the fullest. I think he made the best advantage of his life, whatever it offered him in the beginning. I never ever thought that Thom came from any type of a background that in any way inhibited him in his love for beauty.
I'm amazed at how dedicated he is, how hard he works. I don't think I've ever seen that before in another artist or in anyone in any other line of work.
Thom is painting the art for the people. Nobody else. He's not painting it for John Doe, rich man, or somebody's going to hide it someplace. He is painting it so everybody can see it.
Thomas Kinkade looks at the world as a keen observer with an affectionate eye. He sees the best and captures our yearnings. In many ways, his paintings take us to a place that we would like to be. I suspect that Thomas Kinkade paints the place that we would like to be forever. Thomas Kinkade was born in 1958 in Sutter General Hospital in Sacramento, California. Proud parents Mary Ann Pingle Kinkade and William Thomas Kinkade II lived in Latrobe, California. The family moved to Placerville in 1964, where Thom began his education at the Sierra Elementary School and Schnell Elementary School.
Looking back, our family was very unique. It was a single-parent home. My mother worked long hours. I would come home, my brother and I would come home, we'd do our homework. There wouldn't be a mom waiting there. And we were probably the only family that was like that, or one of the few that I knew. And that was a different era at that time, the early 60s, growing up, when parents, most of the time, as a hangover possibly from the 50s, families were typically still together.
I mean, we grew up in a time really where, at least it seemed to us, single-parent households didn't exist all that much. I mean, it's much more common now. And all of our friends had, you know, in-house dads that were kind of available to them at any given time. And I think that it affected Thom in a lot of ways. And he, more than anything, wants people to appreciate, you know, solidarity and the comfort of having people around that are yours no matter what, unconditionally, having your family available to you. And I see it in his art, and I see it in his words.
Thom didn't have any money, except what he earned when he became a paper boy, and because we were just barely getting by. But again, we never starved, but there were things we'd like to have we didn't have.
The question is not, do we experience pain? Because I think everyone does. But the question is how God can marvelously take those experiences and shape the diamond that he wants to make out of your life.
Thom, one time, this was when he was very young, drew a picture on the dining room wall. And in order to get around it, you know, when I came home from school, because I was in high school at the time, so Thom probably was in grammar school, it's like I tried to clean it, wasn't coming off. So what are we going to do? So he just wrote, "I love you, Mom," underneath it. What could she do? There wasn't anything she could do.
Thom was an artist from the start. I didn't understand it, you would see, but I knew what he was. And he knew what he was. That was important, because, what was it, very early age, when he went to camp, a friend of ours said, "Oh, I like this picture that you've drawn." And he didn't hesitate to charge her $25 for it. She said, "What do you want for it?" You know, but he knew. He said, "Well, someday that'll be worth something." And I thought, "Oh, this kid has guts," you know.
My very first remembrances of him, he was always doing these sorts of things. Matter of fact, his studio eventually spread into our entire house. The smell of oil paint was just permeating everything. He would, you know, my mother had pictures stored under his bed. The laundry room were filled with old canvases that he had painted. You know, parts of the living room were filled with things that he was working on in relation to his art. It was just, you know, there was just no doubt, trust me, that Thom perceived himself as an artist from day one, and, you know, continued with that vision without wavering throughout his entire adolescence.
Every time he'd paint something, one was better than the other, and it would just shock me. I have some of the old ones, you know, and I think, oh, that's how wonderful. And everywhere you look, we had paintings, and the house smelled like it constantly.
I used to draw these incredible weirdos, just these horrendous-looking people, and, you know, we just laugh at them. You know, Thom creating this guy that looked completely distorted, and it was absolutely hysterical. As a kid, it's like, this is the neatest thing in the world, to be able to create these renderings of these things that everybody wants to either laugh at or enjoy. He also kind of became known as the artist around school, you know, junior high, high school, and, you know, even in grammar school, everybody takes on a sort of tag as to what they are. You might be the athlete or the intellect, or, you know, the cheerleader or whatever. Well, Thom was the artist, and he, even at you know, during his high school days, would live that life.
He studied everything he could find about any artist, old or new. He read, and his sister, fortunately, worked at the library, and she'd bring all of these books home, and he pored over them, over their lives, but their paintings as well. He just, any artist, anything, and he just went so deep into their lives. He could tell you what made them what they were, and he wanted to be like them, and he, you know, tried to emulate everything they did and their lifestyle, and it was, I thought it was very remarkable for a young man, especially, you know, 14, 15 years old.
He very quickly developed himself, and also developed connections, if that makes any sense, because we were real fortunate to have, while Thom was in high school, Glenn Wessels living, you know, just one house down from us, and with his studio, and he was able to go over and really absorb a lot of knowledge that way.
And Glenn was he was retired, and he was old, and he loved his work, but he wasn't as active as he might have been. And he took an interest in Thom. And Thom said, I'd like to see your studio. And so Glenn took him back to this big old barn where the studio was, and Thom loved it. He ate it up, and he would go over and clean the barn up, and just clean up for him, anything, just to hang around and watch what he was doing.
Here I am, a 12-year-old kid without a dad in the home. You know, no male role model to speak of. And God brought me a role model. He brought me this man who came to our town. He retired after his wife had died, and he was a college professor of art. He retired and built a studio 100 feet from my house. Little dinky small town up in the mountains of California. Here comes this internationally known artist and builds a studio a stone's throw away from where I live. And I became his apprentice. More than an apprentice, I became his friend. He was 80 years old at the time. He's a wonderful, dear old man, and he brought me in and he taught me about life and about art.
As newlyweds, the Kinkades agreed that the Hollywood fast track was not the direction they wanted their fledgling family to take. The couple returned to Placerville, seeking the bedrock American virtues centered on family and faith that they believed could best be nurtured in a small-town environment. At the same time, Kinkade moved his art back to the landscape and narrative subjects that were dearest to his heart.
They were young, very much in love, very cute couple. And probably my favorite memory of Nanette was I stopped by the studio one night to drop some paintings off or something, and she was out mowing the lawn with Merritt strapped her in her back in a backpack. Thom was down painting, and she's out there mowing the lawn like crazy. They did a lot together. You almost always saw them together. They were very good, homey people. Sometimes they would come by in the afternoon, and one day Nanette grabbed a broom and started sweeping out the warehouse while Thom and I were unpacking some boxes or something. So they were very, very down to earth, good people.
Well, Thom and I have always been a team throughout the whole process of the evolving vision and company. It's very exciting how the Lord's been faithful at each phase of the company. Originally, the faith was just for the business becoming established at all.
His original artwork, even before he went into the publishing business, was well received. And so they were like the rest of us. They were living in Placerville, you know, doing their own yard work, driving, a 5-year-old car. But no, I think they were always very comfortable with what they had. It wasn't like they were desperately seeking some goal that this was going to attain for them. They were very content with what they were doing, even then, even in Placerville.
At that time, our savings, our life savings, which I think it was about $5,000 that it took to produce a print, and rolled the dice, decided to go ahead and make a print of one of Thom's Alaskan scenes, which was Dawson of the Yukon.
I got a call from a printer that he was having a problem with a painting. It needed to be reshot, and I believe it was Dawson. It was like a slice of life. There was people in the street, and there was, it was kind of a bird's eye view of a town, which is something that I wasn't seeing in other people's paintings, because they were sort of static, and there was life to his painting.
Neither of us had any real business background. My background in nursing and Thom and his art, he was the visionary and I was the implementer.
Sometimes we would ship enough posters, you'd look down, the hallway would be nothing but maybe 25 or 30 cylinders that we had rolled and packaged and processed the orders, and then Nanette would throw them in the back of the car and haul them down to the post office and ship them out. It was a very small operation in the beginning.
Thom was producing his own prints, having them done, sitting out at a card table in front of one of our local supermarkets here in town, selling those prints on his own for $25 a piece.
It took us, at least 6 months to sell 200 prints. And I bought 30 of them to keep it going. And but then after the first 200, somehow people, that's 200 people who had seen the print. and liked it, and they passed the word around. And then the rest, when he printed 1,000, those went pretty fast at $35. We raised the price a whole $10 because they were selling so nice. Then we sold out, and people were desperate to get more, and he wasn't going to print anymore. And so it just went from there. That was such a success in the end that he just kept going.
And he actually donated the original to the library, which hangs in the library to this day. It's a very, very large piece, something like 3 foot by 4 foot, and it would probably, if I had to put a value on it, I would say it'd be worth $500,000 today. It wasn't worth perhaps that much at the time, but so he's been very, very generous to the, not just the town of Placerville, but the county of El Dorado and surrounding areas.
For Thomas Kinkade, as for most artists we come to care about, talent is only chapter 1. Beyond the question of facility are the issues of quality, of values, of wisdom, if you will. That is particularly true of an artist like Kinkade, noted for his generosity of spirit, who shares his experiences, his enthusiasms, his humor, his beliefs, his faith in his art.
You know, I've spent my entire life trying to present hope to people through my paintings. I tried to impart a message of light, to give to others this sense that the world is not all darkness and ugliness. And a painting can do that in a very dramatic way because it goes into someone's home and it's a reminder continuously of a message. It is a little glimpse into a different world. No matter what we face in our life that might be a struggle, might be a challenge, I believe my paintings have been a tool to remind people in the midst of their struggle that there is beauty in the world, there is hope, that God loves them, that He cares for each of us, that it's not all darkness, it is light.
The idealism of the paintings helps instill that kind of hope in people's heart that things can be better and that they can have that for themselves, that these are things that are attainable in their own lives through choices and an attitude.
Instead of cursing the darkness, let's just light a candle.